you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hooks, appreciate it very much our opportunity to meet and chat yesterday. As we discussed in my office, repetitive catastrophic wildfires have unfortunately become the new normal, not just across California, but throughout the western United States. And so while we're working to address this issue by allocating an unprecedented amount of funding for mitigation work through the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was signed by the president this last Monday, and the soon-to-be completed Build Back Better bill, the speed by which these funds are typically distributed is simply too slow. Mr. Chairman, I ask to enter into the record a recent Washington Post article that highlighted the case of Grass Valley, California.
Without objection.
Thank you. You know, in this particular case, highlighted in the article, which I also shared with you, Mr. Hooks, local officials knew that Mount Olive Road and the area around it was at an extreme wildfire risk. And in 2018, they actually applied for a FEMA grant to clear dry brush, thin trees, and mitigate that fire risk. Yet by 2021, they were still awaiting on a decision when the river fire ripped through the Mount Olive Road area of Grass Valley and destroyed 140 structures. Now, according to the same Post article and their research, of the $11 billion that FEMA has allocated for mitigation over the past decade, only $1.5 billion has actually been spent. The research found that counties are made to wait an average of 7 years to complete their FEMA-funded projects, and during those waits, applicants for fire mitigation specifically experience an average of 3 more major wildfires. So they know it's dangerous, they know the threat's coming, and they're impacted while they're forced to wait. And most disappointing of all, the research found that FEMA is about half as likely to fund grants for rural areas, poorer counties, and communities that are made up of predominantly minority residents. They face longer delays in getting grants approved. So in California, these are often exactly where the vast majority of destructive wildfires take place and have devastating impact. So I know that's been a long preamble, but important for the record. Mr. Hooks, my question is this. Obviously, these delays, you would agree, are unacceptable. What steps will you take, if confirmed, to shorten the time it takes for FEMA to reach a decision on grant applications and move the money out the door?
Thank you, Senator Padilla. It was certainly a pleasure to meet with you. From my own experiences, I certainly know that disaster relief never comes fast enough for the people in suffering. People have been impacted by wildfires in the western U.S., and we have not had that experience to the same degree that you have certainly experienced in California. If confirmed, I look forward to learning about what challenges FEMA has had as far as moving individuals through this program, approving and or denying assistance. And one of the things that I think that I believe we always should do is that as programs grow, that you have to build the capacity and the capability to deliver those programs. And so I look forward to learning from Administrator Criswell and other senior leaders in FEMA as to whether or not, as the money has increased to address these and has been appropriated, have we built the capacity to deliver on those. FEMA has a goal of reducing the complexity of FEMA. And I certainly, as a recipient of grant funding and navigating that process, agree with that forward thinking. I look forward to evaluating along with the administrator and bringing a set of fresh eyes as to whether or not how we've been successful. And also I am very mindful, as you have stated here, is that that communities that are often can afford it the least are most often impacted. And so when we look at programs through a lens of equity, sometimes the length of recovery negatively impacts that equity. And so I look forward to working with you and your staff, as well as the FEMA staff, to address those issues from that perspective.
Thank you. We certainly look forward to the follow-up. And just on that point of equity that you just mentioned, as I mentioned in the takeaways from the Washington Post article, how do you envision working with traditionally disadvantaged communities to make sure that they're treated more equitably, whether it's in the timeliness of their grant applications, consideration of those grant applications, approvals versus denials, et cetera?
Again, thank you for the question, Senator. I believe that the use of technical assistance, both at the federal level and encouraging that at the state level, where you have those expertise, both at the federal and state level, to go in those communities. States really have to understand the communities within their jurisdiction. And the federal government, even though we are supporting the disaster from, a little bit further away, have to understand the needs of those communities as well. So again, effectively utilizing those broad partnerships, being really intentional about those community impacts, and I am certainly in tune with that. We've experienced that in North Carolina, where communities, often minority communities, recover less well because of the difficulty in navigating processes to get the appropriate funding.
Thank you. And my last question quickly, Mr. Chairman. My colleague, Senator Scott, asked how you might respond to pressures from higher-ups in the administration, if you will, regardless of political party. I'm glad he pointed that out, to maybe afford larger grants or awards to some states versus others. I would ask the same question slightly differently. How would you respond to any pressures from higher up in the administration, regardless of party, if the agency seemed to be pressured to not award grants that, from a technical standpoint, seem to be justified?
Sure. Thank you, Senator. It is certain. I don't go into the job with that being the expectation. But again,
Nobody should.
Yeah. But I do lean toward, just as I said before, lean toward my oath, a deep understanding of the program and what the congressional intent on how to deliver those programs, and also looking at whether or not those programs are meeting the needs of the community. And if there is a gap in whether or not those programs, as authorized, are not meeting the needs of the community, I would be the first to work with Administrator Criswell, as well as with this committee and any other congressional body to make the appropriate adjustments. Pressure is natural because disasters are certainly begin and end locally, and so I understand the need for disaster survivors to recover, and there's a lot of emotion attached to it, but we have to have the appropriate authorities both to award and to appropriately consider those communities that have not previously received awards.
Okay. Well, California thanks you for that response, and I thank you for that response. Thank you, Mr. Chair.